meeting is now being recorded.
Ms. Cursuto.
So good morning, everyone. I think it's 10 o'clock and it's time to begin. Welcome to the fourth meeting of the Governor's Water Augmentation Council. I think you all know Governor Ducey has given us the task of investigating long-term water augmentation strategies, additional water conservation opportunities, and funding and infrastructure needs to help secure water supplies for our future. We might start by going around the room and just having the council members state their name real quickly. I'll start with Misael.
I'm Misael Cabral, the Director of the Department of Environmental Quality.
I'm Rod Keeling. My wife and I own Keeling Schaefer Vineyards in near Wilcox, and I'm also the president of the Arizona Wine Growers Association.
I'm Sandy Favors-Whitney. I'm with Freeport Background. Cheryl Lombard, Valley Partnership.
Rick Lavis, Arizona Cotton Growers.
Lisa Askins, Arizona State Land Department.
Ted Cook, Central Arizona Project.
Craig Sullivan with the County Supervisors Association.
Rod Noba with the Northern Arizona Municipal Water Users Association.
Warren Cheney with the Arizona Municipal Water Users Association.
Good morning. I'm Maria Dadgar, Executive Director of the Intertribal Council of Arizona. Virginia Hall,
Spencer Camps, Home Builders Association of Central Arizona. Mark Smith, Irrigation District. Phil Townsend from Yuma.
Sarah Porter, File Center for Water Policy.
Bob Locke with Arizona Public Service Company.
Bass Aho, John Knick, Southern Arizona Water Users Association.
Dave Roberts with Sullivan Project.
Tom Bushatsky, Director of the Arizona Department of Water Resources.
Jerry Walker, ADWR.
Martin Stiles, AEW.
Doug McCaffrey, also with AWR.
We have some folks on the phone. Anyone on the phone? Council that
this is David Brown.
Chrissy
Wade
Dahl,
Noble.
Business Water Council.
Wade Noble.
Okay, thanks. I do want to recognize Maria Dadgar, the Executive Director of the Intertribal Council, as an addition to the council. It's been overdue that we got a tribal representative. Had one originally lined up last fall, but the person retired on us. So it's taken us a while to replace, but welcome. And I'll give a little background on Maria, as we've done for all the council members in prior meetings. She currently holds the position as Executive Director of the Untitled Chapter of Arizona. As Executive Director, Maria provides executive leadership, management, and financial oversight of this tribally controlled consortium of 21 member tribes. Maria is responsible for managing the daily business operations of the nonprofit organization, and also interacts with tribal, state, and national elected officials. In this role, Maria works to promote tribal sovereignty, tribal self-sufficiency, and oversee policy development on behalf of the 21 member tribes. Her previous positions have included Program Manager for American Indian Studies at Arizona State University, Executive Director of Atlatl National Native Arts, Phoenix, Acting President and CEO of the National Center for American Indian Enterprise Development in Mesa, Arizona. She currently serves on the board of directors for the Miracle House Foundation at Silver Pima, Maricopa Indian Community, the American Indian Policy Institute at ASU, the Indian Legal Program at ASU, and the Water Resources Research Center at the University of Arizona. She's also an active member of the New Delta International Honor Society, in business with the Grand Canyon University chapter. So thank you and welcome. Well, for any of you members of the public that are on the phone, I'm going to ask you to mute your phone at this point in time. If we have time for the public comment later, you'll be able to unmute your phones and weigh in on what we talked about here today. I think, as you will recognize, we're in a new room here. To give us, cut us a little slack, we're still trying to work through some of the audio issues. I don't think this audio sound system is as forgiving as the system we had in our former building up on Central Avenue. As I mentioned earlier, there's no way to turn on and off these microphones. They're very sensitive, so any sidebars that you might be having are going to be picked up and are going to be recorded. And as we have done in the past, we have made the entire recording available through our website to the public. So I guess with a grain of salt. So if you do have the need for a sidebar, unfortunately, you're probably best going outside to do that. Now, before we move on, I wanted to recognize, I think Senator Griffin is here. Senator Griffin, would you like to address us at all before we start?
No, just here listening.
Thank you for attending. Hopefully I haven't missed any other elected officials. So I think we're ready to move on. Hopefully, the agenda reflects that the focus of today's meeting is twofold. First, we're going to have a presentation on the Department of Water Resources Communication Plan, followed by a discussion the Council might want to see in its communication plan, something that was teed up in the first annual report, and which is also teed up in the executive order creating the Council. And then second, we will discuss the topics that we created in that first report and try to prioritize them and put a plan going forward for taking action to address those topics in subsequent meetings. Again, I think all of you are aware that we filed our annual report on July 1st, 2016. It's available on DWR's webpage. We emailed a link to that report to all of the council members. We talked at the last meeting of trying to find a better way for input by the public and by the council on documents and materials that would be discussed at our meetings. And we are working on a portal on our website in which we would be able to take comments, we would post documents. We hope to have this portal done prior to this meeting, to have the presentations at this meeting up on the portal, but we are still in the testing phase with our IT to make sure that it's going to work and work smoothly. So we will have that up and running for the next meeting. I think now we are moving into item 2 on the agenda, the presentation on the communication plan. And obviously, it's been very important to me as the director of DWR, and I know to Governor Ducey, that the department had a very strong and proactive communication plan to convey the message about the situation with Arizona's water supplies, the sustainability, but also the challenges that face in managing those water supplies moving forward. So I think we're going to kick off this agenda item and turn it over to Doug McCaffern to do the presentation.
Thanks, Tom. Can you all hear me okay? Thank you. My name is Doug McCaffern. I'm the Communications Administrator for ADWR. Some of you may know me from a previous incarnation. I can assure you I've left all my opinions back or as word members now, but I'm with servant. Nevertheless, you've asked us to present to you a communication strategy or propose one, give you some ideas of where you might take one. The council asked us to outline a strategy that conveys to a collective audience an accurate portrayal of Arizona's water supply status, and one that builds public confidence that Arizona has the water resources for a thriving and growing economy. Oh, by the way, this is my very first PowerPoint presentation. I told this to my daughter last night. She said, "Dad, I did one when I was in second grade." Wow.
pointer in the middle, but don't.
Yeah. As we say, the council has 4 jobs. It has to set the goals and objectives of the communication strategy. It has to decide what audience it wants to target, and it has to choose a means of successfully getting its message across to that audience. A strategy, in other words, marketing 101. There we go. So what's the goal here? We believe an effective communication strategy should have as its goal communicating the following. Arizona is weathering the lengthy, ongoing drought better than its southwestern neighbors. That as a result of its decades-long effort to prepare for dry spells, Arizona can support a healthy, growing, and competitive economy, and that it is a careful steward of its scarce and precious water resources. So what then is the point of attaining these goals? The objective. As you can see, the Water Resources Department, this is our objective at Water Resources, is to send a positive message about what we've done and what we're going to do going forward on behalf of the state's water supply. Arizona has a positive story to say about water for a variety of good reasons. Not all of them are purely economic. The council should seek to project Arizona as a water success story, that it has plans for the future, and that it is different in that regard from other states. Who do we want to target? We've identified 4 potential target audiences for the council. One is media, local, regional, and national. Local chamber of commerce groups and the businesses they serve, as well as for general audience consumption. Broadly expressed, we believe the council is looking to communicate the relationship between Arizona's water availability and its capacity to continue growing economically. To accomplish this goal, business and economic development leaders really must walk a very narrow path. All 4 of the target audience cited above are keenly interested in knowing whether Arizona is accomplishing the 2 essentially competing goals of water conservation and water availability for public consumption. Economic development groups like the State Chamber of Commerce face these questions pretty much every day. As a matter of fact, we asked our communications colleagues at the Arizona Commerce Authority about the most frequently asked questions put to them by businesses considering an Arizona investment. Those questions reflect a mix of viewpoints about water availability and about the state's commitment to water conservation. These are very typical questions. How reliant is Arizona on Lake Mead for water? Lake Mead is a story that the entire nation is keenly aware of. That bathtub rain is not something that only the people in the Southwest state national. As a matter of fact, last night there was on the Discovery Channel there was a documentary showing Colorado. There was some issues with the name, but it prominently featured that bathtub rain. Very recognizable symbol of what's facing the Southwest. Does Arizona have the same drought issues as California? First time using a pointer too. This is a fascinating question to be posed to for people to be posing to a commerce authority in the state. When is Arizona going to stop growing? These are the people that encourage it to grow, but yet people are asking that question of organizations like our commerce authority. That should tell you. Each of these questions indicates an awareness of the Southwest's long-term parks condition. potential audiences, however, are not focused exclusively on assurances of supply. This is an important point. To varying degrees, they all are concerned about what the state is doing now to steward the important resources that appear to be dwindling. Strategically, the Community of Water Resources attempts to address the questions posed by all four of the audience I just referred to. Our weekly newsletter is designed for a general audience, and our social media is designed to market toward expanding that audience. By modern standards, our approach is not unusual. We identify target audiences that we believe have a keen interest in database water-related issues, and we attempt through our newsletter, social media, and our soon-to-be redesigned web-based water news service. We're full service here. We intend to extend the reach of our voice through those vehicles. Here's an example. This is an example of how we approach our audience. This is our Arizona Water Facts. I want to write this one down. This is a helpful aid for finding factual information about water in Arizona.
Go back to that.
We address, we think, all four of the major topics that people are concerned about. Do we have enough water? We talk about water building our economy. We talk about the future, what we plan for Arizona's water future, what we're doing about it. And this is a very important point. There's probably no issue outside of dogs trapped in cars that people consider more personal than water. People are very anxious to conserve, and they take it very seriously. I'm going to deal with this a little down the road here in more detail, but people take water, wasting water, very seriously and very personally. Here's some examples of some other, some of the economy-based pages in our Arizona Water Facts website. Agriculture, golfing industry, its value, and specifically the value of human agriculture, Mr. Aja. The general public is highly attuned to any perceived failure on the part of the Arizona leadership to conserve water. The messages they receive, for example, from I referenced the Killing in Colorado series that I saw last night, it wasn't so bad, that often depicts a combination of increasing water scarcity and less than prudent stewardship on the part of that resource on the part of the people in charge of the state's water. In short, they see this. In terms of public perception, carelessness about water in the drought-stricken Southwest is on a par with pets that get left in cars, as I mentioned. Outrage level is high, and people have a hair trigger in terms of their willingness to face condemnation and take action. People take water very seriously, and how seriously they take it. I think that no issue in recent months better distilled people's sentiments regarding water than the slap over the Nestle's bottled water plant that will be opening soon in Phoenix. Personally, I didn't get it. I guess I have a low irony threshold. Some of my former colleagues in the media have a higher irony threshold. I find living in the desert to be hot sometimes, and when that happens, I consume water, and very often I drink bottled water. I think most of us do, but this became a huge story, and a lot of people took issue. The letter that appeared in Arizona Republic around this time, the lead story in the May 21st Republic was about how the state is having to plan for less water as the drought continues and that this may be the new normal. But the day before, it was reported that Nestle is going to be bottling millions of gallons of Arizona water and ship it out of state, which is not the case, by the way. Is somebody in our state government that clueless, or do they just not care? This is one of several letters to the editor that appeared on this subject expressing similar sentiments. Public officials like the Phoenix Water Director, Catherine Sorensen, and Rita McGuire did a very good job, I thought, explaining the facts. They published op-ed pieces about the bottled water plan for West Phoenix. A bottled water plant is a business like any other. It will use a comparatively small amount of municipal water, which is an assured supply. The product will be consumed locally. People like bottled water here. It's hot. Did those arguments move public opinion? Well, maybe some, but here is one of several stories that have been released just in the last few days. As a matter of fact, I found a couple of these. These are essentially op-ed pieces that appear on the web, but it's still an issue that resonates. We tracked down a story that appeared in Colombia in South America on this issue. So people have a preconceived notion that I think revolves around their deep concern, however misinformed they be, about the availability of water in this region. Here's another letter to the editor regarding water conservation. People are very anxious about this resource and concerned about conserving it. Another one, water is still readily available by turning on the faucet, but we can't lose sight of the importance of conservation. Low water use fixtures, landscaping changes, and minor lifestyle adjustments can make a big difference. By working together, we can ensure Arizona remains a beautiful place to live for and stay hydrated. Difficult to overstate the public's commitment to water conservation. And that means conservation as it applies to everything related to water. Our businesses, our lifestyle, our environment. Obviously, it is a critical element to all of those things. People are seriously consumed about it. Anyway, thank you for your attention. At this point, we'd be happy to hear from you, Council, as to what direction, if any, you would like to take our communication strategy. Thank you.
So I'll just add, we wanted to give you some overview of some of the materials that DWR is putting out into the public domain and hear from you about whether or not you'd like to build on those materials, whether you have your own ideas, whether you think there are specific audiences or specific pieces of what you've just seen that really relate directly to what the council's charge is, whether we should take those pieces and those specific items and tailor a communication plan that the council can put its stamp on. So I guess I'll take comments from the council. Sarah.
I'd appreciate a quick summary of the efforts to get the Arizona water facts and other stuff out to new audiences. I'm sure that there are things you're doing, but what are they?
Well, most of our efforts are social media oriented. Twitter website, as I think I mentioned, the vehicle is by setting up really a pretty classic multimedia electronic-based shop. We have, since we launched this effort, I would say in April, we've increased the number of hits to our website, as well as by, I think, a factor of 10. I think we're well into the 3,000 now in terms of regular monthly hits to our website on these issues. I don't have breakdowns specifically about Arizona water tax, but that's I can tell you it's a well part of our media. Yes.
I guess one of the things that we struggle with anyway is because we count every drop of water in Arizona, we're able to roll right off the top of our head how many gallons we use or acre feet we use for any kind of purpose. For most of this, we talk in acre feet, and we are okay with that number. But when you talk to the public and you convert it to 20 billion gallons of water a year, they go, oh my God, you use so much water. And trying to put that in the right context is just a real struggle. And so if we can come up with a way to talk about how we use our water and how efficiently we use it and put it in the right context, that would be a step in the right direction.
That is a real challenge. As a former member of the media, too, I can tell you that expressing the concept of acre feet to the general public is not an easy one. Basically, there are three ways to illustrate it. It's an acre of land covered by a foot of water, which has got a good visual to it. It's the number of gallons, which has some resonance because the number is high. And also, I believe, enough water to sustain a family of 3 families for a year. Which also, all of those do a job in relating the image to the public, but yeah, it's not an easy concept to get across.
Yeah, certainly it's important for us to continue to convey message of all that Arizona has been doing to be successfully managing its water resources. I mean, we've done, as you pointed out, we've done the best job compared with all of our neighbors. We've really positioned Arizona in a good place when it comes to managing our water. And I think that message is starting to be understood by the general public a little better as we continue to try to convey that message out there and tell them all that we have done. But as you pointed out, the public still is real concerned, and they want to know, well, what are we doing next? What are we doing for, in the future? And how are we preparing for that? And so I think there's always that challenge of trying to convey all the good things that we've done, but to also be pointing out and showing that the reason we've done so well is because we planned and invested in our water resources and infrastructure. And so the only way that we're going to continue to do well is if we continue to plan and invest in our water resources and infrastructure. And I think the public's wanting to hear that, which is part of the reason why we're all convened here to talk about augmentation of future augmentation efforts. And I think it's important to get that message out to the public that we're still working, that we're not resting on our laurels.
Yeah, I couldn't help but agree that there is a go on the details about exactly what pretty quick. Yes.
I've been asked in a couple meetings, and I was just curious, a couple questions. Do you have a budget for your communications plan? I'm sure it's small, Fiscal. And I guess the second question, though, along those lines, because your budget is limited, if you prioritize your audiences and how, with the tools you have, and then how we can pull in getting that information out.
Well, I can tell you that as prudent stewards of the taxpayers' dollar, our budget,
right.
But it doesn't need to be. We're in a different era now in terms of communication. The objective is if you have access to the web and you know how to build an audience, which is a key to it all, that you can, at least to some degree, create the same sense of that any classic publication, albeit to a much more targeted audience. But once they know that you're a good source for factual information about that subject, they'll come back.
So I'll just add that our budget is not set up in a way that we have a specific line item for communications, but we have, a year or so ago, I think we had one communications person in the department. Now we have 3.
Okay. And
are in the process of hiring a 4th, I believe. So it's also important to note that under the new Arizona management system, the transformation of government, that one of Governor Ducey's highest priorities, we have metrics, measure our performance metrics, and one of the key ones is our communication effort. So it is a high priority for us. I don't think we have the kind of budget that we can do television spots or use billboards on the freeway. But I think, as Doug said, there are other ways to accomplish that same goal, get that message out there as much as possible. And I think one measure of our success that is harder to quantify is we have been invited over the last 15 months or so in an increasingly large way to appear on things like Horizon, other television shows, radio shows, and have definitely increased our contact with the media for print interviews and things like that. So those are all things that add up to showing that we are improving the outreach to a whole variety of ways.
Do you have a priority list of targets, though?
Well, our priority is expanding the general audience interest in water. That's what Arizona Water Fact is really designed to address. I think everyone around the table probably knows every detail of what was flashed on the screen a little while ago. The general public is less aware, and the idea is to broaden their understanding of water availability in Arizona, but more particularly, and selfishly, let them know that we're the source to come and find out about it.
So I would just say this, that hearing about DWR's communication plan and discussing what we want potentially out of the council's communication plan. So I guess I would throw that back to you.
Yep.
You have some ideas about what the council wants to address and what the council wants to communicate, who the priority audience should be, and what those priority messages should be. That's, I think, what we're trying to elicit from the council today. Sandy.
Building on what Warren was saying, we've done getting better and better about articulating the successes that we've had, and I think over the last 10 years or 8 years, we've really pushed that in this state. Being careful not to over-articulate that to the point where people become complacent is very important. But the role of bringing up the role of this council and the Governor's Water Initiative, and what the intent is, and how you fold it into that water fact, because I think that's going to be a site that more people will probably visit on your website. I think that's going to be something that the general public's going to be extremely interested in. And so really talking about while we've done these good things, we recognize in the future there's potential gaps, and recognizing the drought's going to come and go or continue, or however that's going to play out. What is the role of this commission in sort of those core areas? Identification of projects or identification of solutions. What is that going to be over the long term, and how does the creation of this body, or making it clear that the creation of this body and the governor's initiative is aimed directly at that, and that we're not standing down. Arizona water leaders aren't standing down. Arizona government leaders are not standing down. Happy where we are. We continue to, and through this body, will continue to address those issues that we continue to move forward. But I think really building and identifying things coming out of this body is really key to that. What specifically are we going to be doing? Are there specific projects that we're going to look at, or generalized projects? Are there specific areas of water supplies that we are, development of water supplies, those types of things I think have to really come out of this body to feed that niche there in addressing Arizona's future.
Just a couple of points. First of all, again, I agree with what Sandy just said. We don't want to paint a picture so rosy that people become complacent. We know, as a result of some of our past efforts and looking at projected water needs that we have in the state, we're going to need the support of a lot of people if we're going to develop those water resources that are going to be necessary to meet those future water demands. And by support from a lot of people, in some ways it may be funding support for a lot of these projects that we're looking at. So we don't want to paint a picture too rosy. Certainly we don't want to say the sky is falling, because it's not. And we want to take credit for some of the successful efforts that have been accomplished in the past with regards to our water resource planning. Secondly, is there any plans on adjusting this message differently for metropolitan versus rural areas of the state, or are we going to basically the same thing for everybody? Everybody's in kind of a little different situation depending on where you are in the state. Or is that just something that maybe needs to be considered?
Well, targeting your audience is a critical part of building a communication strategy. And the governor's own plan is divided the state into 22 different regions, each with their own 22 different planning areas, each with their own water issues that they have to contend with. So each of those got different interests to be attended to. So I would imagine that Arizona obviously is much different. Issues facing it.
Okay.
Many of the ideas that have been expressed around the table this morning, I think, are important to incorporate into the communication that comes out of this team. We don't want to confuse people that it's all just one big water mishmash of all these things that are happening, but the messages that AEWR has, my agency might have, or the different programs that we're working on do reinforce each other to a certain extent, and we can build on that, similar to the things that Warren said and Ron said. There's a lot of hard work. There's more hard work to come. We can't just sit back and rest on our laurels. We want to find some balance between rah-rah and everything's awful. In that regard, we do need to do the same thing, though, in our communications, is to reference the past, but move on to the next. We can, as Warren alluded to, focus on what's next and what needs to happen next, and we need to, in that balance between the excitement and the pride and the happiness us about the good things that happen and reporting those. We need to be honest about the hard work that there is. We need to tell people up front, this is going to cost more. It's going to be hard. You need to support your government leaders in difficult decisions that they need to make and make that come down on what can they do and move beyond. It's still as important as something we can build on. Move beyond the conservation that they're doing with their shower heads and their toilets and their recycling water and things like that. What else can the average citizen do to help us do our work? It's to support us by willing to maybe pay more and support difficult decisions and be engaged and understand and absorb the information that we're giving to them. That's the ask for those folks out there to make us successful. You can't sugarcoat it. You can't make it at too high of a level. It can't be too complicated that they'll turn away. But they need to understand what it is that we're trying to accomplish with clarity, or they will tune out.
Spencer, sorry. Next Michelle. Go ahead, Spencer.
I just, thanks for the presentation. I think it's good, and I think it's an important first step. One of the goals that was talked about was how Arizona was different than other Western states, and I don't think we do a good enough job articulating that message. We have obviously a very long, successful, and rich history of water conservation and planning. I don't think we tell that story well enough on a national scale or a regional scale for that matter. And I just wanted to know, are there any, or I encourage you to drill into that and include that in your messaging, especially on the economic side and on the national side about how much we have done and why we're not in the position that California is. And I just think that is a story we don't tell very well or very often.
Michael.
I just wanted to congratulate you and your team on the Arizona Water Facts website. It is professional, engaging, the infographics are great, and it's very well done. So I just, as we all talk about ways to improve, I just want to acknowledge you guys have done a good job with that, in my opinion.
Thank you. John.
I'd like the department to consider part of their long-term strategy a K through 12 educational campaign. More than 30 years ago, the city of Tucson, and I imagine it probably happened in the Phoenix area too, when they embarked in the 80s and 90s on educating the public, they quickly engaged the school districts in the area. And some of the most interesting things that we see in southern Arizona now is we have parents that went through a lot of those water educational programs back in the 80s and 90s and their parents today. And now that a lot of that messaging is being reinforced through their children back through them. So I think it's a long-term strategy to team up with the state school districts and come out with a campaign on water education for the school districts.
Ron.
Doug, since you're going to be working with social media, it seems to me like we do a lot of that in our industry. It's a great way to sell stuff when you don't have any money to advertise. And so I think we're trying to communicate some very complex concepts to the public. And maybe what we ought to do is, the best thing that social media does is it allows you to slice these down into little bitty stories. So you can actually communicate really small stories that are going on, the activities of the department, the council, concepts of every stakeholder in the group. You can tell one little story about something that happened, and you can get to thousands for almost no money. And you can decide where that's going to be sent to. You can do it geographically, you can do it by individual's interests. There's all kinds of ways to slice the message up and deliver it. So I would encourage the department to think about these smaller stories, smaller stories from people. I think that we're having a hard time communicating what an acre-foot of water is. Maybe we shouldn't try. I think we should try some other kinds of stories that are more intimate and processed.
Great point, Ryan. I also might point out that in the Alberta's social media is a great way of really understanding how effectively your message is getting out in terms of metrics. The depth of analysis that you can perform on how many people are reading, how far into your stories that they're looking, how much time they're spending on the web page. The depth of understanding that you can gain about your audience.
Yeah.
Hi, I just wanted to say, people are aware that we have 22 federally recognized tribes in the state of Arizona. Tribes control approximately 28% of the land in Arizona, and so I feel that there should be a section just really talking about the history and the involvement of tribes, and almost like a separate section, but then have a way to integrate some of the outreach that this council is making for tribes to have, collaboration and come to mutual agreements whenever that's possible. When you put together a communications plan, it does affect the emotions of people. When you communicate, you affect the emotions of people. And what do you do with those emotions? Are you trying to get people riled up? Are you trying to calm them down? Are you trying to get them to take action? And I think the gentleman, Ted, really was talking about that. We're trying to get people to take action, but in a way that is going to benefit the state. And I don't know about you guys, but I have family all over the country, and they are always looking at Arizona. They're deciding they're at retirement age. They want to move here. They're making decisions when they look at the communications, when they read our articles and plans and our website. They're making decisions on whether or not to buy homes here, whether or not to move here, and probably corporations are doing the same thing. So communications plan, internal and external. So it's going to go beyond the state of Arizona, and so we just always have to keep that in mind. It's not only our general public that's looking at this and making decisions on behalf of the state. There are people around the country as well. So we'd be willing to, through the Intertribal Council of Arizona, always willing to present opportunities to meet and collaborate. We do have a Tribal Leaders Voice Policy Council that meets, all the tribal leaders meet quarterly. There may be an opportunity for some type of interaction where we can have a formal discussion. Thank you.
Sandy?
Getting back to sort of the role of this commission and your question on the messaging for this commission, and I like the idea of the small stories and examples, but to maybe further what this commission is about and communicate the possibilities that this commission would be considering, looking at maybe small projects and highlighting those that can be used as examples for larger regional or smaller regional, the APS story with the effluent. We have stories all over the state as examples of either public-private partnerships, public-public partnerships, things that can be used to really highlight what this commission is really charged with, and using those examples to start to get people familiar with the types of things that need to be done in the future to address our future water needs, whether they're financing, unique financing situations, anything like that. You've got the SRP, Gila River Indian Community example. I mean, a lot of these things are just, while far-reaching, they're just smaller examples of potentially larger projects that could be done to address what we're here to do, which is address augmentation.
Hunter.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I really agree with what Sandy just said, and I'd like to maybe throw a couple compliments and then maybe an addition to
Sandy just offered. First of all, to Doug and your team, I really like the content that you're putting out. I've had 3 or 4 people use a word with me related to what you're doing, and it's approachable. The content that you're putting out is, you can keep your hands around it, you can understand it very quickly. It's bite-sized, you can in a series or in a serial type of way, you start to get a picture of what the story is. When I first took this position with the governor's office and I started really getting into the water arena, I'm a rookie by standards of this group. The analogy that I used with my friends and family was that of a Rubik's Cube. Because I really feel like, and some people have heard me use this analogy, you have groundwater, you have surface water, you have the upper basin and lower basin, you have Mexico, you have municipal interests, you have industrial interests, you have the gamut of agricultural interests, and each person has a piece on that Rubik's Cube, and if you put your hands on it and try to twist it, everybody starts getting on the edge of their seat. And I think one of the purposes of putting a group like this together is going to make recommendations for changes on a statewide basis. You've got to have a lot of people at the table who each have a piece on that cube who are willing to start talking about putting their hands on making appropriate changes or taking a direction. So I think just in general, bringing a group like this to go to Sandy's point of, there's a lot at stake in making decisions for the future. What are the goals and aspirations of the state, and how are we going to deal with them? I think that focus of this group, why this group has been brought together, is a key point. Breaking it down and keeping it simple is difficult for all the reasons that I just explained, but I do like the idea of breaking some of the larger projects that the state has taken on in the past and daylighting some of the costs associated with that. What did it take politically? What did it take financially? What did it take from a time, just in terms of time? Our friends at SRP and CAP will tell you decades to get entire project put together and functioning. The groundwater code, decades in the making, and then finally get it passed in 1980, and then to make it a functional, working thing, it took several years to get there. I think some of those stories help put context into, as we make decisions here, and we make recommendations to the governor for what is a good path forward, those types of things help an average person get a context for what we're trying to accomplish, and really the gravity, I think, of what we're trying to put together here. So those would be some recommendations for the group that I would put forward to that.
Anyone else? Vance.
I really like your messages. I think that the topics you have are right on target, basically what we kind of discussed. There's what I mostly like is that we're dealing rationally, and in the fact that I've always felt that people focused on 100 years out there and driving people to be concerned about year 101 was irrational. Nobody in this room is going to live to year 101, I don't think, unless something happens that's going to be there. So to solidify reality, I think that you use these points, but we talk about and what some methods that Hunter said is action, that we need to solidify investment, solidify augmentation, and because the one real reality to the public out there, I'm not talking about farmers, Rick, but to the public, is that their cost of water is going to go up, and that's real, and you can say that it will. Availability is, a little murkier, but that one's not. And so what we're trying to do here in order to to continue our economic vitality here in this state, to continue the availability of the resource, and to manage the resource. We need that investment in infrastructure.
Anyone else? Ron?
Have we considered how we're going to measure the effectiveness of this communications plan?
We haven't discussed that, but we certainly can come up with some metrics to do that. So I asked them to put this up on the board, the recommendations from the plan. We had a specific language that we left off with last June, development of a communication plan for the state to accurately convey the status of its water supply resiliency and its efforts to maintain that status moving forward. I think we've heard a lot of really good suggestions in both of those categories, the status and the efforts. I think Sandy and Hunter's description of where we think we need to go with the efforts to maintain that status moving forward are right on point. And I guess I'm still a little uncertain about how much the council wants to get into where we're at today versus where we need to be tomorrow. So I'd like to take some quick feedback about that, because after about 45 minutes. Any thoughts on that? The right balance there? Sandy?
I think the council's about moving forward. I mean, Ted said it perfectly, and you guys are doing a phenomenal job of getting the information out. This council's role is a proactive role in moving forward.
Yeah,
Folks really agree that that should be the focus?
Yes.
Seeing most heads shake yes. So regardless of that language in our first report, this is obviously a work in progress, and I think we're meant to having to follow that. So to try to wrap this up a little bit, I think we've heard a lot of good suggestions here for how to achieve that moving forward message. I think the better next step is for DWR to put something together for all of your consideration in that regard, and we will do that. I also heard, and I appreciate all the comments about DWR's communication plan. I heard some really good suggestions about how to improve that, and I appreciate the suggestions as well. We'll try to incorporate some of that into our thinking as we move our communication plan forward. And so I think we will put together some information. We'll get it out to the members of the council, and then as well, when we get our portal up, put it on the forum. Misael.
So Mike, I agree that the message needs to be the positive direction forward, but that direction presumes that you know where you are today. And if we completely eliminate that message, I think that it'll skew where we need to head. So if we take assessment as to where we are today, we understand that we need prudent progress towards the future. If we don't have enough of that, then all of the media sensationalism takes over, and then our direction gets impacted by that. So I agree that there needs to be a lot of good information about where we go forward. But I disagree that we should completely eliminate the discussion about where we are today.
Again, we won't completely eliminate that. I think we had quite a bit of that discussion in report number 1. We can pull information out of that report and put it into the background for this effort. Other comments or questions? Probably ought to move on to agenda item number 3. We already have the topics for this current fiscal year up on the screen. I think when we put these topics into our first annual report, we put them in there knowing we need to have more discussion. Jumping off point for that discussion would be this meeting. We did not flesh in report number 1 a priority for our items, although I think for me, number 2 is something we need to start working on immediately. With the help of Misael, DEQ is already going down this path, some listening sessions and rulemaking and things. But we need to talk about these other things, and we want to work on these at the same time. We want to prioritize them. So again, you can all read number 3 is funding for augmentation infrastructure. 4 is the potential for augmenting groundwater supplies through enhanced national infrastructure recharge and conservation, including incentives and infrastructure needs. And then the catch-all, the big task of the council, identification of large-scale augmentation opportunities. So, any thoughts about mostly 3, 4, and 5, since I've used the chair's prerogative to say we're moving forward on chair number 2. And I think, just to give you some idea what I'm thinking, and I haven't talked to Misael about this, but I think at our next meeting, I would ask Misael to give a presentation on where DEQ's at in that process. Perhaps that presentation could include an update on action items that we left from the Blue Ribbon Panel on water sustainability that are also being worked on as we speak. Give people a status update on where we're at on reuse and put together a plan to move forward. So, funding for augmentation infrastructure. Thoughts about how to move forward on that item, and in what order of priority compared to 4 and 5? Ron.
Well, I don't think we're going to get very far with 4 and 5 unless we've got 3. Without funding, we're not going to do much augmentation throughout the state. You know, there was I think most of us sitting around the table are aware that there was a significant effort looking at funding by the WRDC a couple of years ago. They came up with a number of suggestions. It never went anywhere. I don't know if that's something that can be built on or expanded or what, but there has been some work in the past that's been done. And we don't want to reinvent the wheel here. So, really, I think that's a pretty high priority number.
Spencer.
You know, from my kind of history and working difficult issues, for number 3, I would just throw out there maybe you want to develop just a smaller group from this group to maybe drill into the history as was mentioned and kind of the ideas that were talked about in the past and see if they're still viable or worth discussing in greater detail in a smaller group and then bringing back to the larger group. So I just threw that out.
I like that idea. Do folks have other comments about that one or any other comments? Suggestions?
I think Bass said he wanted to share it.
I want to, well, that's important, and I think, but it's the point about you have to have 3, you don't get 4 or 5. They're closer than that. Sometimes you won't get 3 unless you have a plan for 4, because when you go out to talk to Senator Griffin about your number 3, the first question you get, well, what's it for? And so you've got to have a little bit of 4 and 5 in it. I would throw out there that, speaking of Senator Griffin, she had a bill this year that the Land Department and DWR are performing a review, a study of some potential augmentation issues. I think if we can put a little more meat on that bone, and then that way we can kind of tie that with 3. Not that, you got a site, you got this, you got that, but here's what we're looking at, I think it will help to item 3 greatly.
I agree with Bass, and I think, Bass, you may recall, we kind of started on that with the WRDC. We put together a bundle, actually, I think Tom started of projects throughout the state where everybody looked at what they anticipated needing in the future, and it was a ballpark price tag put on it.
We can certainly resurrect that Do I have volunteers to work on this small group from this council?
The funding one, or the?
Yes, the funding one.
Tom, is that, just to clarify what you're asking us for, is this is to look at what has been done previously, as Ron suggested, to kind of pull together past efforts. But then I'd also just add that it's really wise, I think, when talking about funding, to get some creative financial folks at the table also. So that they might be a lot more valuable when you've actually got some projects identified that you want to accomplish, as Bassett alluded to.
So, Lauren, I agree with that. And when we discussed the creation of the council with Governor Ducey, take my words to him, where I've been part of several different funding efforts and have failed at every single one of them. And we need to find a different way. We need to find different people. I think it's the people you're talking about. Also, what's come about more recently is a bigger push towards those public-private partnerships that we referred to earlier. We need some of those people on that committee. And so I think maybe what the committee would do is not only look at where we've been, project lists and other things, but also a scope of work to be developed, who to reach out to, who are the right people, outside of the water walks that might help us create some success we haven't been able to collectively create so far the last probably 20 years that I've been involved, at least. So I'll just throw out a name that came to mind for me, and that was a person that now works with Arizona's state retirement system, investing our money, Carl Pohl. He has a water background, he's on the CAP board. It's some of those kind of folks, I think, that we need to think about and look for. So we're going to go back to volunteers for the subcommittee. Obviously, BWR would staff that. Volunteer chair of that subcommittee. Sarah, you have your hand raised?
Chair, no, I'll be a front.
We have one.
No, you have more of them.
We'll start drafting in a minute.
Spencer and I put our hands up.
Yeah, I mean, I'll they'll co-chair.
We've been through that nightmare. Why not do it again?
Looking for punishment, Dave. All right.
Volunteer.
Dave.
Yeah, go on.
Dave Roberts. Bass. Cheryl. Andy.
All those names.
Council members on the phone. Any volunteers? It's a great time to unmute. So we'll collect up those names. We'll get that rolling. We'll need some more meetings for all of you. Sorry. But I think that is the key to this whole thing. Yes.
I'm a fervent believer in desol, and I don't see that on this list. Is that in considered 5?
2.
Yes.
What did you say? Desalination?
I think it's both 2 and 5. So 2, I think, was
2 and 5.
poor quality groundwater and reclaimed water, potentially, if it needs to be desaled. And I think 5 was more of that seawater with partners.
The reason I offer that is because we keep talking about it. The costs keep coming down. There are examples of where it works in Carlsbad. And it seems to me we just seemingly let it drive off because we think maybe it's too expensive. I don't know that. Where it is. We need to have an update. What the possibilities are, the capacity. So, I mean, long term, people tell me desol is a major player in this deal. So, I'm just asking.
So I would suggest the path forward, that larger discussion that makes the most logical sense, to me anyway, is next meeting of the council, give an update on where we're at in those discussions. And we've talked before, California has an ocean, who has an ocean.
Yeah, right.
Not holding my breath anytime soon to do anything with California. But we are working with Mexico. Issues of Sea of Cortez desalination were teed up in 319. Our discussions in the successor minute to minute 319 that are ongoing are including discussions of the same thing in more detail. And I will know more about the path forward on that in a couple of months or at the next meeting, whenever that is. And I think it would be a good point in time to give everyone an update on where that process is and where we're heading down that path, because it feeds right into this, just like you said.
Tom, would it be possible to put another group that's working concurrent together to start looking at detail and getting some of those answers?
Yes, we can do that.
Are you
volunteering to be the chair of that group?
Sure.
Yes, he is. Yes. Got a good one.
Folks can shoot us emails if they'd like to be part of that. We don't have to spend a lot of time going through that. So, So we're going to create a fund group and the desal group. Desal group, Bob will look at in-state groundwater and reclaimed water opportunities, correct?
Yeah.
We'll hold an abeyance for that group to look at possible ocean desal in partnership with Mexico or California. As things move forward on other fronts there, I think it's worthwhile to that. But certainly that group, we have information from a lot of sources, folks in this room have been involved, about the cost of desal. Have some information that we dug up prior to the governor's trip to Israel on the cost of desal in the Middle East and Israel that we can help put together. And the costs are coming down, obviously. But I think we also need to address some of the related issues that always crop up when you talk about large-scale desal, the carbon footprint, the power needs, like that. Certainly part of the discussion and will be part of the discussion for us to actually make this happen. So just some items to consider in your scope of work as that's being put together. And other folks can weigh in on other items they think might be appropriate either for that group or for the funding group. Anything off the cuff? So I think we're through the discussion of the FY17 topics, but I did want to make the point that piecemeal agenda topics or topics that folks want to discuss are still on the table. If any of the council members have something that they think needs to be discussed by the council, let us know. We can consider having that as a separate agenda item for future meetings. I understand things will come up that folks might think are important to talk about. So don't feel bashful about sending us that kind of email, giving us a phone call. So I think we're at a point in time where we can take comments from the public. Is there anybody from the public that would like to speak?
Mr. Chair, members of the council, thank you for the opportunity to speak. My name is Jennifer Martin, and I'm here today representing the Arizona Grand Canyon chapter. I have one comment per agenda item regarding agenda item 2 on the communications plan. I just want to echo what you heard from some of the members that stood out for me as well. that in the goals of the communication strategy, they all emphasize entirely delivering that positive message, and I think maybe injecting that element of concern regarding potential future threats and what the public can do is important so that people don't take from the communication plan the message that there's nothing to worry about and they don't need to take personal responsibility and be part of Arizona's future water security. So I appreciated hearing some of that from the council and wanted to echo that. Regarding agenda item number 3, discussion regarding topics for FY 2017. Something that the Sierra Club is really looking for in any planning process pertaining to water resources in Arizona is recognition of the importance of environmental water concerns, if you will, or to be more specific about exactly what I'm talking about, like the importance of maintaining flow in Arizona's river, the importance of surface water and things like that. And so we feel like what we're seeing is a lot of emphasis on water delivery for municipal use and industrial use and those kinds of things, and that's very important, and it's obviously very central to your mission. But at the same time, we're looking for that acknowledgement of the importance of maintaining flow in Arizona's rivers, of looking at what the future impacts of climate change to water resources in Arizona are going to be, and those kinds of things that seem to be somewhat neglected in the way the process is currently structured and in what the objectives have been stated so far. So you all, if you don't have a letter yet, you will. I provided a letter to staff, to each of you, asking that a future topic and possibly even a topic of such significance that it might warrant an information session or a conference or something like that would be looking at threats to Arizona's environmental water resources beyond just municipal and industrial use and considering potential solutions to threats that exist.
Thanks. I would ask one thing of you.
Sure.
Is it possible that you could send us an electronic version of the letter? Here's the letter. Anybody that would like a copy? It's here. Electronic version, so if we get other requests, we can more easily get it out. But we will also post this letter on our website.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I will provide that electronically.
Thanks. Anyone else from the public want to speak about any of the agenda items? Yes.
Thank you. Rory Van Pocky, Texas Planning Golf Course Superintendent Association. Talking about your communication plan, just extend we would like to help, extend that, get the word out about what you guys are doing to the golf community, different allied golf associations, different tournaments that come here. I have to check with everybody first, but I was thinking it would be a great way to communicate what you're trying to do and your plans. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Anyone else from the public? I'll just close then by reminding everyone that the next meeting is October 28th. We're going to attempt to do it at our new offices at 1110 West Washington. The room's a little small, it might be a little tight, but it might be a little bit easier with sound systems and other things to make this work better. And this room is booked as well, apparently. We'll just have to make do, I suppose. Anyway, we will work with the 2 new committees to try to schedule at least an initial meeting of those committees. We will put together some information, outline, etc., for a communication plan and get that out to members of the council. And again, members of the public can access this information on our website and through the portal, which is about ready to go live. Are there any other folks on the telephone, of the public, perhaps on the telephone, that would like to comment? Hopefully.
Tom, this is Chris Udall. I just want to say thanks. This has been a good conversation. I have to get off, do a little traveling, but thank you all.
Anyone else that's members on the phone want to say any last parting words? If not, I think we are adjourned. Thank you all.
Nice to meet you.
No.